Hold on tight for the next hour. You're entering into a place, a zone called the alternative to the alternative media. It's a place, a special place where even truth seekers fear to tread.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Affirmative.
Okay, welcome back to the Investigative Journal on this Monday. It's already March 26, 2018. That's the day they tell us it is on our calendar. And before we get started today, I want you to remember this. Do you think we went to the moon landing? Did you think we made a moon landing? Do you think the Earth is as NASA tells it? Do you think there really are satellites up in space? Do you really think nuclear weapons exist? Those are some of the questions we're going to answer today. Now, I'm going to concentrate on the last one. Do you think nuclear weapons really exist? You're listening to the Investigative Journal. Go to my website at greganthonysjournal.wordpress.com, getting shows going back well over a decade regarding what I call the Vatican-led New World Order and all its tentacles. Not much different than what others talk about on the mainstream news or the alternative media. This show, folks, is called The Alternative to the Alternative Media because we go just one step farther. Okay, we'll analyze things in Washington. We'll analyze things going on at the Vatican. We'll analyze things going on in Russia and China. But yet we will take a different look at the end. We will take it one step farther and not afraid to do that. And that takes a lot of guts in a world that wants to stop short of the truth. Stop short of the truth. And I want to talk today about, are there nuclear weapons? Should we be worried about a nuclear attack? I was sent an email the other day, and the last couple of days I've been talking and listening to the sounds of war all over the media. I've been listening to this constant friction now between Russia and the West, i.e. London, who's claiming that Russia poisoned some assets there, some people in Great Britain. And then America now has put on heavy sanctions, kicking out over 40 high-level diplomats, kicking them out of the United States. And other countries are following suit in the West. Now, Vladimir Putin has vowed to retaliate. And so you can see this friction starting. Now, on the other side of when we look at China and the United States, Trump just recently put on tariffs on certain products coming into this country. And how is that going to affect our pocketbooks here? How's that going to affect your pocketbook? And China has vowed to retaliate. So there's friction going on there. And then, of course, we have the powder keg. We have the match that could be lit to start it all. That's North Korea, or the constant troubles in Syria and Israel. So we have a lot going on, and so the natural thing is people are calling for World War III and saying it's not far off. And somebody sent me something written by a guy by the name of Steve McCoy. He provided a scenario if World War III was to break out anytime soon. Not a nice scene, but the Jesuits, folks, are itching for blood and another big war. And America, this time, folks, is in the crosshairs. We all love to read, talk about, watch movies about wars in the past. But today, let's view war in the future. Where will you be? Trump has been tagged by the Jesuits to be the president to light the fuse, perhaps. Possibly the last American president before the world shifts to a globalist rule. What a question. And Steve McCoy sent something. He did a complete scenario of this, starting out with Russia and China launch all their ICBMs toward pre-calculated targets in U.S. and NATO affiliated nation. Early missile defense warning systems are going off all over the country. NORAD goes to DEFCON 1. All available U.S. and NATO ICBMs launch at targets in Russia and China. ETA to missile impact on both sides, 13 minutes. The President addresses the nation for the last time on live TV. The President and all essential personnel are moved to Cheyenne Mountain Complex. ETA to missile impact on both sides, 7 minutes. The world is in total anarchy. There's no government. There's no order. Tens of thousands die in civil unrest before the missiles even hit their targets. ETA to missile impact on both sides, 30 seconds now, folks. The missiles find their targets. Millions, maybe even billions, die in the initial explosions. Millions more die from radiation poisoning and civil unrest. Sounds like a Hollywood movie. Nuclear winter sets in. The sun is blocked out. All life eventually dies, and the world has to start all over again. Now, the only problem, maybe, is that what if nuclear weapons didn't exist? What if they were just a concoction? Kind of like the moon landing was a concoction by NASA. Kind of like how NASA is a concoction itself. And wouldn't that be a great way to keep people in fear? But the question becomes, if there's no nuclear weapons, what would they do? Well, there's many things that they can do to wipe out humanity, and we'll have to look at that. But what is, for those of you who believe in nuclear weapons, and I'm not saying I do or don't, I'm just saying I feel the same way I did when I believed and I wasn't quite sure about the moon landing and found out that was a hoax. I wasn't quite sure about the universe and the law of relativity and gravity, and then I found out all that was a hoax. As far as what the size and shape of this earth really is, and the moon and the sun, and all the things that surround us in this beautiful world. I feel the same way, so let's look at it. There's a nuclear timeline here they're pressing on us. And Leo Szilard, you probably never heard of that name, realized the concept of nuclear chain reaction, although no such reaction was known. He invented the idea of an atomic bomb in 1933 while crossing a London street. He patented it in 1934. There's a British patent on that. You can find it at 630726. Now, in 1938, December, German chemists Otto Hahn and Fritz Strassmann detect barium after bombarding uranium with neutrons. This is correctly interpreted by Lise Meitner and her nephew Otto Robert Frisch as nuclear fission. You've heard that in your classes, right? Nuclear fission. In 1939, Otto Robert Frisch experimentally confirms Otto Hahn and Fritz Strassmann's discovery of nuclear fission. 1939, Nazi Germany begins the German Nuclear Energy Project. 1939, U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt receives the Einstein-Szilard letter and authorizes the creation of the Advisory Committee on Uranium. The Uranium Committee has its first meeting on October 21, and $6,000 was budgeted for conducting neutron experiments. 1940, they started investigating the feasibility of an atom bomb. In May 1940, the paper which Yoshia Nashina of Nuclear Research Laboratory of Riken and Professor of Chemical Institute Facility, Imperial University of Tokyo, presented to Physical Review and showed that there had produced Neptunium-237 by exposing uranium oxide to fast neutrons for more than 50 hours. Furthermore, recognizing that Neptunium-237 is representative of global nuclear fallout and produced from atmospheric nuclear testing. A lot of testing here, a lot of testing. Now let's move down. There's about 7 other things that happened here. Plutonium. In April of 1942, Joseph Stalin was first informed of the efforts to develop nuclear weapons based on a letter sent to him by Georgio Fialov, pointing out that there was nothing being published on nuclear fission since its discovery, and prominent physicists likely involved had not been publishing at all. This urged the Soviet Union to start a nuclear weapons program. Let's move down a little bit. There's a lot of these things going on. But, remember the name Robert Oppenheimer? In 1942, He is convened at the University of Berkeley, a physicist, and discusses the design for a fission bomb. Edward Teller introduces the superhydrogen bomb as a major discussion point. August through November, the Manhattan Project is established under General Leslie Groves. Site X is chosen, I bet you didn't know it was Tennessee, for isotopic separation of uranium-235 and natural uranium. Will later become Oak Ridge National Laboratory. The Hanford site is chosen in Washington for making plutonium nuclear reactors. Site Y is chosen in New Mexico for bomb design and manufacture, and will later become Los Alamos National Laboratory. So we move down. They're conducting tests. They had their first test. The Soviet Union conducts its first atomic test, supposedly, called First Lightning, in 1949, August. Then the 50s through the 70s, it really starts to escalate. And you're going to see all of this stuff. Pakistani Atomic Energy Commission. The United States test bombs the first fusion bomb, 1952. Soviet Union conducts its first test of a hydrogen bomb in 53. It's a lot of bombs. People, that's all they're doing. But nuclear weapons really exist. And remember that in 1958, Eisenhower signed NASA into law. And that's been a money monger ever since, hasn't it? And all they do is do computer imaging. Could it be the same? They raise a lot of money for the testing of these nuclear weapons. What if they just don't exist? They could never really come up with a nuclear weapon, but they tell us that to keep you in fear. Don't worry, though. They'll figure out a way to kill you if they want to. Now, France successfully in 1960 tests a nuclear weapon called Gerboth Bleu. Sounds better in French, though, doesn't it? The United States and the United Kingdom signed the 1958 U.S.-UK Mutual Defense Agreement. Wow. 1967, China successfully tests a hydrogen bomb. 1968, the Nuclear Proliferation Treaty opens up for signatures. And 5 permanent members of the UN City Council. Only India, Israel, Pakistan, and North Korea have not signed the treaty. Okay. 70 to 90. Let's go through this here. 72, Pakistan's atomic program gets into full swing. India tests nuclear weapons in 74, called Smiling Buddha. Okay. The Project 706 is established under command under General Zahid Ali Akbar. And September of 86, Mordecai Vanunu divulges secrets about Israeli nuclear weapons program to the Sunday Times in London. Yep, and I remember interviewing Mr. Vanunu a number of times years ago. Wow, this goes on. Let's move a little quicker here. 2003, North Korea announces it has several nuclear explosives. In Iran in 2005, Ayatollah Khamenei issued a fatwa forbidding the production, stockpiling, and use of nuclear weapons. 2006, in October, North Korea tests a nuclear weapon for the first time. January 2016, North Korea hydrogen bomb is tested and confirmed by North Korea leader Kim Jong-un. September 2017, North Korea released images and conducted tests of 2-stage thermonuclear bomb with yield in excess of 100 kilotons. Now, we have enemies on both sides saying they have nuclear weapons. Now, what if they didn't? And that really lays credence that they're being controlled by a higher power, right? And i.e., I conclude it's the Vatican-led New World Order Jesuits. Okay? So, that's your history of nuclear weapons. If you believe it, great. But, let's look and see what time we have. Got a little time here. So we're going to play a couple videos, have some fun with this, and look into, right now, the nuclear hoax, perhaps. And some reasons why this gentleman does not believe nuclear weapons exist. The writer of this article, which I'm going to read, I got to find his name here. Who is this? Doesn't even give his name. I'm sure he gives a website here. I'll give you that a little later. But he says, just like many childhood fantasies promoted by the state I used to believe in the atomic bomb. When I grew up, I realized that every official pronouncement of the state must be held as highly suspicious. I agree with him. He'd make a good reporter. Here are some reasons why I question the very existence of nuclear bombs. Supporting evidence for points below will be covered later. So the question I ask you, do you really believe that nuclear weapons exist? Now, somebody asked me the other day about satellite TV. And I said, well, that's just the name they put to it, because it's all ground-based off of antennas. And he said to me, how do you know that, Greg? There's all these satellites flying all over. And I said, have you been up there and seen them personally, eyewitness? No, NASA gives me pictures. I said, did you ever see those pictures they give you? It's the flimsiest type of construction I've ever seen. It's like you're watching something made for children's toys or something. And you actually think they train there. And there's people up there, and there's an atmosphere like they say. I don't think so. And let me tell you, it's a huge budget, and they're just playing with you, and they give you these, how many satellites they say are up there? I mean, it'd be crazy. And none of them ever fall down on your house, do they? That's weird. Some should fail. They fall down and, I wish they would just fall right down on the Capitol building, not hurting anybody, just to get rid of that satanic symbol on the top of our Capitol building. And look at that one, folks. But, so, then they said, well, what's your evidence? I said, well, I put up a satellite TV once in a very remote area. And I talked to a very intelligent satellite repairman from Dish, DirecTV. And I said, why are all these satellites pointing in one direction here? And you would think that, and then what about when the satellite moves? How do you keep track of that? Does your satellite dish move with the satellite as it revolves around the Earth? Or the Earth is moving around the whatever? And he said, no. There's a ground-based satellite antenna right over there, about 20 miles away. That's where we point it to. And I said, well, why do you call yourself a satellite company if you're doing ground-based? He said, I don't know. I said, okay, hook it up. I got to watch the Cubs game this afternoon. So, there you go. It's speculative, whether we even have these things. So is it speculation only that we don't have any nuclear weapons? Well, let's look what this gentleman has to say. Trinity film documentation, he says, shows the building of a tower like the supposed nuclear bomb tower, but with TNT. Building of the TNT tower was purportedly for comparing a nuclear blast to a conventional explosion. This is claimed to be the largest ever conventional blast. Considering that many of the Manhattan Project scientists doubted that nuclear bomb technology could work at all, the rush to produce a highly theoretical technology could have easily been faked, with the Army passing off the TNT detonation as the nuclear one. If the nuclear bomb technology were impossible, it is entirely plausible for such a B scenario to exist. At least one of the highest scientists was excluded from examining the Trinity blast, a blast which was conducted at night, with observers not needing to know the actual distance, and which had characteristics they could not verify as being different from a huge conventional blast. The geopolitical claims that and implications of nuclear weapons are myths. Critical examination of technical specifications and technical hurdles makes the production of nuclear bombs unlikely. The technical hurdles are made exponentially more difficult as a result of proposed miniaturization of nukes even to the size of a grapefruit. The over-the-top claims of an artificial element that can have all the amazing and improbable properties of plutonium, making it excellent for producing complicated bombs, is consistent of the creation of an elaborate fiction. The apocalyptic nature of the exaggerated claims of nuclear weapons and the threat of creating nuclear winter calls into serious question the very existence of nuclear weapons. This is evidence that the nuclear narratives are more characteristic of psyops rather than of reality. The improbable properties of plutonium for the production of nuclear bombs also calls into question its purported use in nuclear power space probes. Where is all the lead shielding that would be required to protect workers and components of these space probes, which incidentally would also make it too heavy to launch? The claim that the Soviet Union and the United States were avowed enemies during the Cold War is also a myth. No credible evidence exists that there was ever been such a device as an intercontinental ballistic missile of Soviet origin. No credible evidence exists that the Soviets had any quality of nuclear weapons as claimed by the U.S. government. No unedited film footage exists of an American ICBM being launched on one continent and arriving on another. The intense race for the bomb has intense political motives for forgery. The dimensions and weights of the bombs that are not consistent with photos showing bombs being suspended and transported without expected heavy-duty hardware. Film footage of the supposed nuclear bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki are edited, and it cannot be verified by chain of custody or chain of evidence. Many of the proposed human effects of these nuclear bombings have not been independently verified, but have been under strict military control. The purported nuclear bomb areas were under very strict control by U.S. military, so that independent scientific verification of nuclear phenomena have not been made. Museum artifacts at the Hiroshima Museum contained features easily forged, with claims not independently verified. Photographs of Hiroshima match the characteristics of conventional firebombing. When compared to cities like Tokyo, Hiroshima lacks any characteristics that would be unique to a claimed nuclear bombing. Movie footage of purported nuclear bomb detonations commonly show visual effects consistent with special effects and overlay of different exposures. Movies are often Hollywood style, with frequent splicing of unrelated footage put together as one event. For instance, ubiquitous cuts between explosions, audience reactions, and instrumentation. This with the raw archival footage. Yeah, they do the same thing, didn't they, with the moon landing, folks? Isn't that interesting? And, we're going to continue with this in the second half hour. But let me finish it. Claims of extreme danger of the materials associated with making nuclear weapons and the maintenance of nuclear power plants has been brought into question by nuclear experts who would swim in pools of water used in nuclear power plants without any ill effect. Color footage of supposed nuclear test detonations are also inconsistent with the temperatures purported to be involved. With temperatures identical to that of the sun, we shouldn't be seeing dirty orange fire and black smoke, which is more characteristic of things like TNT or napalm. The idea that mushroom clouds are unique to nuclear blasts is also a complete myth. In fact, you can create a mushroom cloud explosion in your backyard with common materials. Oh, that's something for you to do today, isn't it? Go create a mushroom cloud. But anyway, is there a possibility that nukes don't exist? And they're just telling you that, there's a good possibility, but they're going to frighten you one way or the other. I mean, I don't want to get hit by 1,000 tons of TNT either, do you? But this idea of nuclear fallout, hiding under desks, dying of radiation, is that a hoax? Could it be possible that it doesn't exist? And could it be possible that at Hiroshima that wasn't a nuclear weapon? Many people who look at it say yes. So we're going to keep exploring this with some people who have put videos out on the internet. Have you ever heard of that? Boy, I've never heard of YouTube. Have you? That's a new phenomenon. I haven't heard of it till yesterday. But all these people are putting their little faces up on these YouTubes, and there's just thousands of people following them. Wow. Back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on Internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the Internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
The book of Revelation says, "The spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ." This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy.
Hi, Greg Anthony here from the Investigative Journal, and I've never steered you wrong before when it comes to talking about the truth regarding your political and social worlds you live in. And I don't plan on steering you wrong today when I say get involved in the hemp revolution, hemp for health and wealth. I know of some of the best hemp oils on the market. If you haven't tried them, you have to. And pay attention, they're lab tested. So contact me, Greg Anthony, at gregbeacon@gmail.com. That's Greg Beacon, G-R-E-G, B like boy, E-A-C-O-N.com. And I'll hook you up with some of the best hemp products on the market. And if you want to become a sales associate and make some money selling hemp to your friends and family, do that. Contact Greg Anthony at the Investigative Journal, Greg Beacon at gmail.com, Greg Beacon at gmail.com.
The following program is labeled dangerous and off limits by the supreme Jesuit command. But stand tall, people. Listen up, and you may just learn something.
Oh, dear Lord Jesus, this ain't happening, man. This can't be happening, man. This isn't happening.
Okay, back for the second half hour, and let's have some fun this half hour and listen to some videos put out by people who believe that nuclear bombs are a hoax. Now, what do you have to worry about if nukes don't exist? And are the powers that be just using it to keep you in fear, also making a fortune off of programs that really don't exist, like NASA and the moon landing, etc.? Is this just another one? Well, let's listen to this. It's called the Nuclear Bomb Hoax, TV Fakery and PSYOPs. And this particular one, he's looking at evidence of film that's been taken on nuclear weapons that we all say, yes, it must have been a nuclear attack, and questioning the validity of those photos and videos. I like that kind of thinking. Do you? Here we go. That's supposedly a nuclear bomb going off.
Do nuclear bombs exist? Your immediate answer is yes. But how do you know? During the mid-20th century, television and movie watchers were bombarded with imagery of what was purported to be atomic test footage. But what were they really watching? They couldn't rewind a videotape or rescan through a video on their computer. So what option did they have but to accept these images at their face value? Now we have opportunity to scrutinize these images to see if they hold up to analysis. Take a look at these trees. Well, what was that? And who turned the camera? They're in awfully straight lines, aren't they? Now this must be a different blast because it's coming from a different direction. Wait, now they've put it back. But those are the same trees we saw in the first clip, aren't they? First they showed us these trees that they panned. Then they show us these trees that look like they should be next to a model train. Notice how straight the rows are. It looks artificial to me. Then they show us these trees again. Where's the forward camera? And then back to these trees again. And then they show us what looks to be a real forest that's been chopped down. Now take a look at this. It's footage of the first H-bomb test called Ivy Mike. Watch how it changes. That's a composite. Then it morphs into this. It looks like a completely separate explosion. Now take a look at the frame before the explosion, and then the one after. These frames were cut together. Why? Then this frame was cut to this, which looks like the sun to me. It looks like they're zooming in on the sun. Maybe a composite because the clouds aren't moving. Then they introduced some sort of liquid. It looks like a laboratory concoction in composite with the sun. Next is Operation Dominic Fire Recon. What does that look like to you? Watch it again. It's the sun. Now here's Operation Greenhouse. These guys are getting all ready to see what looks to be the sun again. The sun seems to start to expand. Maybe it's being zoomed in on. They worship the sun after all, Lucifer. So why wouldn't they use him as their greatest weapon? And who headed up the whole program? None other than J. Robert Oppenheimer of the Oppenheimer family, who is reputed to have been the original financiers who got the Rothschilds started in Frankfurt, Germany in the 18th century.
Takes on multi-armed form. Now I am become death.
You're thinking, what about Hiroshima? Is that Hiroshima? Is that Hiroshima? That looks like Hiroshima, but it looks like it's been carpet bombed. Check out this image of Rotterdam. Was that a nuclear bomb? Now compare it to this image of Hiroshima. Actually, this isn't Hiroshima. It's Tokyo after firebombing in 1945. If you accept that FDR might have had foreknowledge of the bombing at Pearl Harbor, maybe you might want to leave room for the possibility that his propaganda machine might have created the myth of atomic bombs. There's no question that the powers that be have ballistics with tremendous explosive capacity. But this shot, for example, could easily be high-volume dynamite. And what are we looking at here? Take a look at this house again. Whatever was strong enough to blow it to smithereens wasn't strong enough to even shake the camera. And look how high up the camera position is. Are we looking at another model? Now look at this bus and this car. Whatever's blowing them up is not moving the camera. And this building seems to blow up from the inside. Everything gets blown every which way except for the camera. Except look in this shot, it seems to tilt up a little bit. Now this is one of my favorites. Watch the two guys behind the glass. Who's filming them? Isn't he being exposed to all that rocket fuel? Anyways, I'm not trying to convince anyone of anything. If you're hell-bent on believing that they can blow up the world at the push of a button, then go ahead. But next time you hear a politician justifying the invasion of a country based on the fact that they supposedly have weapons of mass destruction, realize that they're not only lying about the other countries supposedly possessing weapons of mass destruction, they also may be lying about the very existence of weapons of mass destruction. And why don't they call them nuclear bombs anymore?
The military-industrial complex finds it convenient to perpetuate the myth of weapons to exploit the American. Nuclear bombs do not exist. Eisenhower warned the American citizens of the military-industrial complex. They have ransacked the people of trillions of dollars while the education system degenerates. Let's split down the middle two issues. First, Japan, then. In 1945, most of Japan's infrastructure was wood. The oldest wooden buildings in the world can be found in Japan, Nara. To erase Hiroshima and Nagasaki with firebombs was achievable. Is it unthinkable Japan was actually firebombed, and that's the reason for the time delay between each attack? In fact, the Great Fires of Chicago in 1871 took roughly the same amount of time which leveled the entire wooden city, 3 days. Perhaps that's the reason why the Japanese started rebuilding regardless of the imagined radiation. As far as nuclear energy, why hasn't it replaced oil? It's a fishy story. People shrug off the reasons why this might be. What about nuclear testing? The military-industrial marketplace sneakily used high-tech dynamite and flash bombs dropped from high altitude. That's the reason for the mysterious white trails near nearly every so-called nuke test explosion. We haven't unloaded nuclear or atomic bombs in 70 years. Are we that rational? Or is the illusion of nuclear arms a way to cash in through taxation like the fake moon?
Our American way of life. Isn't it bacon and eggs? Seems perfect. But what if it's not? Fresh, secure as you think. Where will you be when the atomic bombs fall?
Okay, let's move on here and see if we could find another video that talks about known nuclear weapons. I think I have. It says this: nuclear bombs, lies, hoax. Have you heard? Street Opinions, 2014 in the UK. I thought that'd be fun to do here.
I just want to ask you a simple question, without commenting on whether it's true or not. Have you heard the idea that nuclear weapons are a fraud or a hoax and never existed?
No.
None of you heard that? No. Okay. Do you mind if I ask you an intellectual question?
What's that?
Without commenting on truth or otherwise, have you an idea that nuclear weapons are a hoax or a fraud? Without commenting on the truth or otherwise, have you heard the idea that nuclear weapons are a fraud or a hoax?
What?
Universally? Yeah. Nukes are a fake.
Well, I know for an absolute fact that they're not a fraud.
What's your evidence?
I served in the Royal Air Force on Maralinga Range in Australia.
You were in Maralinga?
I worked with nuclear weapons.
Did you actually... I've heard about Maralinga and seen the report on it.
Yeah. I was there for the last hydrogen bomb test in 1963.
What did you actually see?
I was out running, and I was a cross-country runner, and I was running out in the bush, and I knew that there was a test imminent, and I was running along this road, and suddenly I felt it was a hot day, but I felt some additional heat on I'd only got the shorts on my legs and my back. And
you saw some heat. Did you see any light?
Yeah, I turned around. I didn't see the flash, but I felt the blast, and I was 40 miles away.
Okay, let's get a little serious here. In 1982, a scientist named Galen Winsor discussed this subject and asked a lot of good questions, and he called it the Grand Nuclear Hoax. Let's listen to what he had to say. Okay, this is around 1982, and there's concluding questions here. One is, who owns all the plutonium, by the way? How much is it worth? If you haven't been burned by this source, you will be enlightened with this show.
I first heard of Galen. He gave to me months ago, and I found his story to be absolutely fascinating. His story is unique, to say the least. Galen has been in 77 different cities in the last 2 years lecturing on the subject of nuclear energy. The majority of his life, the last 35 years, he spent processing plutonium from nuclear reactor sites. He's worked in the Manhattan Project facilities in Hanford, Washington, Oak Ridge National Laboratories and Nuclear Plant in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, General Electric's Midwest Fuel Recovery Plant in Morris, Illinois, General Electric's Fuel Fabrication Facility in San Jose, California, and Wilmington, North Carolina. And he's worked in every major reactor decommissioning project around this nation up to this present time. His major work in these projects has been the analytical process inventory control, which means that he was responsible for measuring and controlling the nuclear fuel inventory for these projects. Galen Winsor has few peers in the world in this area of expertise, and those few peers admittedly know and agree with the things that you'll be hearing on this tape. However, except for 2 or 3 of these experts, they've all chosen to remain silent for reasons which they only know, leaving this man, then, the burden of leading this lonely battle of exposing what we call the nuclear scare scam. He's without question one of the world's foremost authorities in nuclear radiation measurement, and he's recognized by members of the Atomic Energy Commissions of all the major nations of the free world. Mr. Galen Winsor.
Thank you, man.
Okay, he's getting ready.
Today how best to approach this subject so that you would feel comfortable with where I am. And we thought it might be appropriate to start with how I got involved in this. Now, in 1945, I was a Navy radioman out in the Pacific on a destroyer aimed for Japan. We had a one-way ticket. That's all you get, just one way. So, as we were becoming proficient at our business of fighting war, the Manhattan Project caught up with us and did a job. Now, the weapon that was dropped on Hiroshima, Japan in August 6, 1945 was a U-235, fully enriched U-235 weapon, where the material was separated and purified in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. The one that was dropped August 9th on Nagasaki was a plutonium weapon. But to those of us out in the Pacific, it was quite interesting. It had a ticket on it that says, you get to go home. I was impressed. Now, I was stuck out on Guam after the hostilities quit and was running a radio broadcast that communicated with 4,500 ships west of Pearl Harbor. Quite a few to listen to every dot and dash that I made. So I was used to having people listen to me. They couldn't see me, but they could sure hear me. I had all of the good messages that were to come to them. Fleet movements, Red Cross messages. They came along one day and says, we'd like to have radiomen to go down to Anahuac for the atomic bomb test. Not me. No way. I want to go home. So they went through and they took every third radioman to go to Anahuac. I didn't go. They let me come home. But I wanted to go home. I had a driving need within me that says, hey, that big firecracker, I want to know how it works. I want to know everything about how it works. So, back to the ranch in Nevada where I grew up and stacked hay all summer. Gained back the 40 pounds that I'd lost out there. Into Brigham Young University the fall of '46 in chemistry classes. Dr. Joseph Nichols could make an old farm kid like me love chemistry. I hadn't had any chemistry in high school, but the way Joe Nichols taught it, I wanted to know. So chemistry it was. And
Some neat guys like Carl Eyring taught me physics. Along in 47, I ran across a cute blonde from Richland, Washington. Now, this girl had been telephone operator, General Leslie Groves and Dr. Enrico Fermi on the Manhattan Project. She got to put through the calls to Franklin Delano Roosevelt for these guys, so she talked personally to FDR. And she told me some of the stories like you've never heard. She says, oh, in those canyons, great things are done. This cowboy from Nevada couldn't even imagine what she was talking about. Well, in 1947, after we were married, see, I ran until she caught me. I wasn't going to get married anyway. I wanted to get my education. I had to get on with this thing. So we went to Richland, Washington for the first time in September of 1947. I saw that those buildings she was talking about were there. 1,000 feet long, 11 stories high, 5 of them below ground. Tremendous things. And people all over. Camp Hanford in those days was a whole army camp just there to secure that place, to provide security. Thousands of soldiers. You move around out in the desert, hop out of a foxhole and pop a soldier with a gun in his hand. There wasn't any horsing around. It was all business. Back to school. In 1950, I applied for a job up there before I'd graduated. They were in such bad need of chemists, I had a job before I had my degree. And so the last year of my chemistry, mostly English, I did on a bus, riding 25 miles to work in the morning and 25 miles back at night. And I did advanced grammar and business writing, all of those things on that bus. But in September 1950, I got into this thing called plutonium processing when we did it barehanded, without instruments, without coveralls. We had some of the most peculiar acid burns in some of the shirts. I found one of those the other day. It's got acid burns all up the front of it. Plutonium on it, too. Amazing. That was normal operation in those. We ran those facilities, and we ran them so well that by 1965, we had separated enough plutonium when it only existed in the parent uranium matrix to a half of a single weight percent, 0.005 weight fraction of plutonium maximum in that fuel. And we processed enough tons of uranium to recover enough plutonium by 1965 to meet the weapons needs of this country 10 times over for the foreseeable future. Now we're talking about a massive amount of work. Hands-on, do it type thing. And there was a couple thousand of us, and we were just happy as could be, just working like mad, making those plants run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in a community that ran on shift work, ABCD shift. The whole community was a wartime community, people dedicated to doing a job, and we were doing it, and we did it well. No pretense. Oh, yes, there were. Out in the reactor began to sneak in people who wanted a radiation monitor behind every reactor operator. Why? We know how to make these things run. When we got a metal fuel element stuck and it fell down on the trampoline back of the reactor, we'd go in with our feet and kick it off into the pool. Smoking. Burning. If you didn't have an instrument, you didn't know it was too hot, so you just went in and kicked it. Finally, along came a rule maker that says, thou shalt not do that.
Okay, we're going to take a break right there, and break for the whole day. We'll be back in, 23 hours. Right. We'll be back in 23 hours on the Investigative Journal, and come back, because this expert tells us, Galen Winsor, that there's a grand nuclear hoax. Back tomorrow on the Investigative Journal.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased. It has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity, invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host, Melody Cedarstrom, right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free, 1-800-375-4188.